Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the agency is taking on a, quote, massive testing and research effort to determine the cause of autism, which will be completed by September. Secretary Kennedy said the autism research effort will involve hundreds of scientists, and on Thursday, he shared his plans with President Trump during a cabinet meeting, which we did air for you while that was underway. To speak more on this and what we know about autism in general, I'd like to bring into the program now Dr. Evan Nadler. He is a former co-director of the Children Obesity Program at National Children's Hospital. Dr. Nadler, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so let's just start with really the basics and what we know about autism, because it really has been in the headlines in recent years. So what does it entail?
So autism spectrum disorder, which includes many sort of different manifestations of autism. So autism isn't just a one-size-fits-all diagnosis. It's a very complex disease. And what we know is that the recognized incidence or prevalence of autism is increasing. We know that it's thought to be more prevalent in males and females, although that may be just how it's being diagnosed. And we know that people have been trying to figure out what the cause, or causes more likely, of autism spectrum disorder might be for decades now.
And then kind of piggybacking off of that, why is it so difficult to find the cause of autism?
The complex diseases such as autism spectrum disorder and the other sort of neurodivergent disorders, they're never really caused by one thing. They're generally thought to be what's called a multi-hit model, meaning you need to have a genetic predisposition to the problem, and then you need an environmental exposure of some sort, and then you need that exposure to actually happen at the critical time period where the susceptibility from the genetic difference can be expressed.
It's pretty fascinating. I actually never heard it described like that. But if that's true, then I really hope he figures this thing out. By the way, guys, if you haven't seen a documentary called Spellers, I know that the telepathy tapes has been going around and getting a lot of buzz, but I would caution people on that stuff. It's great. I listened to it. It's fascinating. I'll do a video on it later, one of these days. But the documentary Spellers, in my opinion, is way more profound. It's essentially expressing the fact that all of these non-speakers, as the people in the spelling community call them, the people with autistic spectrum disorder, they can't verbalize anything, but they are understanding now that they're in there, they can spell, they can communicate, and it's just a fascinating, amazing documentary that especially if you know anyone in your life that knows anyone else, or if you have someone in your life that's quote unquote nonverbal, definitely give that a look. I'll throw the link in the description. That's a great documentary. Let's see what else he has to say.
So when you're talking about the brain, like autism, the brain develops in the first trimester of pregnancy. So that environmental insult, or whatever you want to call it, could happen anywhere between first trimester, later in pregnancy, or the early postnatal period. And so you can imagine how difficult it would be to sort out the different potential environmental influences that could be the main cause.
Talk to us about the timeline of diagnosing someone who is on the spectrum with autism. At around what age is that diagnosed, and what do doctors look out for?
A good question, because autism spectrum disorder can actually be diagnosed at pretty much any age. And you see more and more women actually who are being diagnosed later in life because they just weren't assessed for that possibility anytime previously. So the things that we look out for are generally subtle differences in the beginning, although people who have, let's say, developmental delay, so not meeting their milestones as they're going through infancy, are more easily diagnosed. But because autism is such a diverse, what we call a phenotype, meaning it looks very different in different people, it can be difficult to diagnose, and thus it's often diagnosed somewhat later in childhood or even into adulthood.
So I just want to make sure that I have this correctly, because as you were talking a little bit before, saying when the brain develops, so within the first few months of pregnancy, to be able to diagnose autism is not something that you could technically see during a pregnancy versus some other diseases that, for example, a woman pregnant with a child, you can diagnose other kinds of variables.
Correct. You can't really assess brain function until the baby's born and you see how the baby's brain is working. But you might be aware of that study that just came out in The Lancet recently that showed that mothers who have gestational diabetes or pre-gestational diabetes have a higher risk of having an infant that has neurologic differences or neurodiversity, including autism spectrum disorder. So it does make you wonder whether the insult that we're looking for is prenatal or postnatal, or maybe it can be either or both.
It's very interesting there. And the fact that
I'm just learning about this now, right? I mean, if you have a study in the Lancet, one of the most world-renowned journals in the world when it comes to medicine, and they are saying that, that diabetes could possibly be a factor in neurological disorders for the child. I mean, and that's how you know that this is all bullshit. Like, how is that not a headline somewhere? I mean, I get it. It's one study, whatever, but let people know, like, hey, this might be a thing. Like, try to lower your weight, try to get your blood sugar in order, exercise, diet, sunlight, whatever, like, take care of your body. Like, that ultimately could be a thing. I mean, if now that I'm thinking about it and the wheel's starting to turn, all right, so if that's the case, that something on either pre-diabetes or actually having diabetes could have an effect on neurological outcome of a pregnancy, what's our obesity rate right now? And what is it? What is the graph as far as what obesity has, what it was and what it is now? And does that correlate to autism? Is there a correlation there? Right? Like, I don't know. When we're done with this, I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull up the obesity rate in the U.S. I'm going to pull up the autism rate in the U.S. and overlay that on top of each other and see what it looks like. And then correlation doesn't equal causation, right? So just because the population at whole is obese, the question then is that the causation, right? So everyone, the famous one is shark attacks also correlate with eating ice cream, right? When you see a graph of somebody of the amount of ice cream that's being eaten and you overlay that over shark attacks, you see a direct correlation. But that doesn't mean ice cream causes shark attacks. The reason why they correlate is because more people eat ice cream in the summer, and more people go in the water in the summer, right? So just because the obesity rate is up, and autism is up, that doesn't mean that they're causing one another, or one is causing the other, rather. What could it be? It could be what is causing us to be obese. What are the factors that are leading us to be obese? The underlying causes of the obesity, that could be what's happening. That could be at play. We don't know. We should find out. This should be on everybody's mind. The fact that anyone who thinks about having a child, anyone who knows someone who is on the spectrum, it should be one of the things in our society that is of the utmost importance, because it's affecting millions of people at this point. Millions of people.
Secretary Kennedy is now trying to really fund all of this research. It really just kind of shows how much we still don't know about this itself. Let's go back to that and the fact that RFK Jr. has said that by September, they will know a cause. Now, what are some of the challenges or complications going forward when tackling this major kind of undertaking that, as you said, for decades, people have been trying to figure out the cause already?
Yeah, so I would never advocate putting a timeline on science. Science is unpredictable, and you never know what you're going to find until you start doing the studies.
See, I'm assuming, though, that this is an assumption. Obviously, he's saying September. That doesn't mean we're starting from zero now. My assumption is he's bringing people in that already kind of know what the hell's going on. Might it be biased? That's for the evidence that has been collected. Put it out there and let it be scrutinized. That's what I'm saying. Obviously, I don't think that they're going to start these massive studies starting in mid-April and have an answer by September. He probably already has people that already have the data. It's been put out, and they're just collating it and making it a nice, neat package for people to see and be able to take a look at.
So I think by putting a timeline out there, it puts pressure on the scientists to deliver. And certainly, I think it's going to make folks skeptical that the answers that are found in that short period of time are actually the real answers versus ones that were pressured by the administration or by the scientists themselves. So So the levels of evidence, so there's a whole different level of evidence that is required to sort of show that something is a cause of something else. And those types of studies usually take much longer than 6 months.
And given the fact that we don't know a cause to autism or a definitive one, I feel that, or I think that some pregnant mothers would be asking themselves, well, what can they do to make sure that their child is as healthy as possible? Is there anything they can really do?
Yeah, so the answer to that is for sure yes. You can definitely, well, first of all, go see your obstetrician, get the appropriate obstetrical care, prenatal care, take your prenatal vitamins. And again, especially with respect to the study that just came out in The Lancet, you want your metabolic health to be optimized probably even before you get pregnant. So what does that mean? That means pay attention to your diet. It means exercise the recommended amount if you can. It means get your other health problems, including any metabolic problems like diabetes or obesity, under control, or at least start treatment for those types of diseases. And just try to optimize your health, because obviously your health is going to impact the baby's health.
And then finally, Dr. Nadler, before I let you go, another question that some mothers may be having. If their child is diagnosed to be on the spectrum of autism, what are some of the steps that they can take to make sure that their child still succeeds in life?
That's very important. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not the diagnosis doesn't necessarily mean that your child can't be as successful as any other child. What it does mean is that you might need some different sort of support services, especially during early childhood development. And you need to be cognizant or pay attention to, both as a parent and then, the support system that's around the child, that the child has some neurological differences or neurodivergence. And some of the cues that might seem totally obvious to you may not be totally obvious to that child. So you need to try to help them through some of the situations that may come up that people with autism spectrum disorder historically have problems with.
Dr. Evan Nadler, we certainly appreciate your time here at Live Now from Fox and talking about this, that a lot of people really do.
He's talking about, obviously, in that particular setting, he's talking about children that obviously can communicate. If you're, again, I cannot recommend that thing enough, the Spellers. I think I've watched it 2 or 3 times. I watched it with my wife. I watched it with my father. And it is a mind-blowing thing to understand that, that these children mentally, that they're in there. They are mentally in there. They know what's going on. They can communicate. They just can't audibly communicate. And there's you get to see some parents with children in their late teens, almost 20, or in their 20s, that for the first time they're able to speak to them. And it is just it's amazing. It's an amazing watch. But yeah, I mean, listen, anyone who's shooting down, RFK right now, it's we want more information, not less. At the end, right? We want more information, not less. Whatever that information is, right? All of this information, a lot of this stuff is being stonewalled, has been stonewalled for years. Why? Because, nobody wants to be liable for what potentially is going on here. What's the answer? Is it food? Is it drugs? Is it environment? Is it a combination? We as a society are extremely unhealthy at this point. You can take a look at, videos of just people. Like we are extremely unhealthy. One of the wealthiest countries in the world. And if you look at places that are barely industrialized, third world countries, they might not have the access, but a lot of the stuff they have is still real food, is still real food. That's one of the things that I'm going to strive for in my life, at least. I mean, I have, I got chickens and I had ducks and stuff like that. And, I would say within the coming year, I'm going to, make a big push on my family eating real food. That's one thing, getting outside, doing exercise. These are the core tenets that everybody knew up until, whenever 2020. That's how you stay healthy. And we just have to figure out what else can we do to get there. Guys, thanks a lot. Give me a like, give me a share, subscribe. Thanks a lot for coming out. We'll see you again in the next video. Thank you.